Clause 4.4 of ISO 27001 represents the point at which an Information Security Management System, ISMS, transitions from planning to operational reality. It requires organizations to establish, implement, maintain, and continually improve the processes that make the ISMS function. Unlike earlier clauses that define boundaries or context, Clause 4.4 focuses on action. It ensures that security is not a collection of isolated efforts, but a coordinated management system. This clause also mandates clarity on how these processes interact, meaning that the ISMS must function as an integrated, interdependent whole. When processes are clearly defined and connected, the ISMS gains both efficiency and resilience. This integration forms the backbone of operational effectiveness, ensuring that every component, policy, procedure, and control supports the organization's information security objectives cohesively. A process-oriented ISMS recognizes that management systems are built upon interconnected activities rather than standalone functions. Each process within the ISMS, whether risk assessment, training, or incident response, has defined inputs, outputs, and responsibilities. These elements must be documented to promote consistency and reproducibility. A well-designed process ensures that individuals know what information to expect, what actions to take, and what results to produce. This orientation supports measurable performance, allowing the organization to evaluate how effectively each part of the system contributes to overall objectives. By thinking in terms of processes rather than departments, organizations create a structure that is both systematic and adaptable, one that aligns security management with broader business workflows. Identifying the key ISMS processes is a foundational exercise under Clause 4.4. Every organization will define them slightly differently depending on its operations and complexity, but certain core processes are nearly universal. Risk assessment and risk treatment form the analytical core, identifying threats, evaluating their likelihood and impact, and defining appropriate mitigation strategies. Policy development and approval create the governance layer that sets behavioral and operational expectations. Awareness training and competence checks ensure that people across the organization understand their roles in maintaining security. Finally, incident detection and response processes operationalize the system's ability to react to breaches and recover quickly. Together, these processes create a loop of prevention, detection, correction, and learning that underpins the ISMS lifecycle. Mapping how these processes interact is as important as defining them individually. Clause 4.4 expects organizations to demonstrate how outputs from one process feed into another, forming a continuous flow of information and improvement. For example, risk assessments produce results that guide risk treatment plans, which in turn inform control implementation and monitoring. Audit results influence management reviews, driving corrective actions that enhance future performance. Training programs align with documented policies to ensure that employees understand and apply them correctly. Incident management processes, when analyzed after an event, generate lessons learned that feed directly back into risk assessments and awareness activities. This cyclical interconnection prevents isolation and ensures that information security evolves through collaboration and feedback. Adopting a holistic systems perspective is key to implementing Clause 4.4 effectively. In a true management system, no process operates in isolation. Every activity, no matter how small, feeds into another part of the system, creating a web of interdependence. Outputs from one function become inputs for the next, forming a continuous operational cycle. This design supports resilience, as the ISMS can adapt naturally to changes or disruptions without losing coherence. Integration also prevents the formation of silos, which are among the greatest threats to security governance. When risk management, operations, human resources, and compliance teams operate independently, gaps and overlaps emerge. Clause 4.4 promotes unity, ensuring that every function shares common goals, communicates clearly, and supports the organization's overarching security mission. Defining ownership and accountability for each process is another crucial expectation. Every process within the ISMS must have a designated owner, an individual or role responsible for its effectiveness, maintenance, and review. Ownership ensures that processes remain current, operational, and aligned with business priorities. It also enhances transparency by clarifying who monitors performance, reports on outcomes, and initiates improvements. These responsibilities should align with the organization's structure, placing accountability where authority naturally resides. For example, IT operations might own incident management, while compliance oversees audits and policy updates. Clear ownership prevents neglect and duplication while reinforcing a culture of governance and responsibility. Documenting interactions among processes brings structure and visibility to the ISMS. Well-documented interactions provide clarity for internal teams, enabling smoother handoffs and reducing confusion about where responsibilities begin and end. From an audit standpoint, these documents also serve as evidence that the ISMS is truly integrated rather than a collection of disconnected tasks. They highlight dependencies, which in turn support more accurate risk assessments by showing where a failure in one process could affect another. Documentation can also support automation efforts. Organizations can integrate digital workflows and monitoring systems once they understand how processes connect. This structured visibility turns complexity into manageability, supporting both compliance and operational excellence. Organizations can use a variety of tools to visualize process interactions and relationships. Process flowcharts and swim lane diagrams are effective for illustrating sequences of activities and responsibilities. Rossi matrices, defining who is responsible, accountable, consulted, and informed, help establish governance clarity and ensure that everyone understands their role. Narrative descriptions, often compiled in ISMS manuals, provide additional detail about how processes link together. More advanced organizations may use digital dashboards that monitor process performance in real time, integrating data from audits, incidents, and key metrics. These visualization tools transform abstract systems into tangible structures that can be communicated, audited, and improved. They also make it easier to train employees and explain the ISMS to new team members, reinforcing a culture of understanding and participation. For more cyber-related content and books, please check out cyberauthor.me. Also, there are other prepcasts on cybersecurity and more at baremetalcyber.com. Auditors evaluating Clause 4.4 look for concrete, operational evidence that an organization has identified its ISMS processes and understands how they interact. They expect to see documentation that maps out each process in sequence, showing inputs, outputs, and responsible parties. A mature ISMS will present this information not as theoretical charts, but as living proof, records of completed risk assessments, management reviews, and corrective actions that demonstrate the system is functioning as intended. Auditors also test for consistency between documented procedures and actual operations. For example, if the ISMS manual describes a monthly risk review process, the auditor will look for records verifying that these meetings occur. Ultimately, the depth of integration between risk, control, and governance activities reflects organizational maturity. When processes work together seamlessly, auditors can see that the ISMS is embedded in daily operations rather than existing as a compliance formality. Despite its importance, organizations frequently make errors when implementing Clause 4.4. A common pitfall is documenting processes that look good on paper but are not actually practiced. These hollow procedures create a false sense of compliance and quickly unravel under audit scrutiny. Another issue is overlooking dependencies, failing to identify how one process relies on another. For instance, training programs that don't incorporate findings from incident reports or audits are disconnected from real risk behavior. Some organizations fail to assign clear ownership, leaving processes unmanaged or inconsistently executed. Others rely on informal practices without formal definition, assuming that everyone knows how it works. Clause 4.4 demands discipline. Processes must be clearly defined, assigned, and practiced consistently across the organization to create an ISMS that operates predictably and efficiently. The benefits of defining and managing ISMS processes properly are immediate and far-reaching. Clearly documented workflows improve internal coordination by standardizing how information moves between departments. Handovers become smoother, reducing delays and misunderstandings that often cause compliance failures or operational friction. Strong process definition minimizes gaps in control coverage, ensuring that no critical activity, like reviewing access rights or testing backups, falls through the cracks. It also enhances audit readiness, since auditors can easily trace how actions flow through the system. In daily operations, defined processes create predictability. Everyone knows what to do, when to do it, and how success is measured. This predictability becomes a major asset during security incidents, when coordinated action can determine whether an event becomes a crisis or a controlled response. However, ISMS processes cannot remain static. They must evolve alongside the organization. Managing these dynamic interactions means adjusting processes when business models, technologies, or strategies change. For example, a company shifting to cloud infrastructure must integrate cloud configuration monitoring into its existing risk management and incident response processes. Lessons learned from past incidents should continuously feed back into process redesign, strengthening future resilience. When handled well, this adaptive interaction management keeps the ISMS aligned with the organization's strategic priorities. It transforms the ISMS from a compliance tool into an engine of continual improvement, capable of learning and evolving through feedback loops that connect all parts of the system. Concrete examples illustrate how deeply ISMS processes depend on one another. The supplier review process, for instance, directly links to risk treatment and procurement. Weak supplier assessments can introduce vulnerabilities that propagate into overall risk exposure. Similarly, vulnerability management must tie into change control. New patches or system updates can only be applied effectively if coordinated with operational teams responsible for uptime and configuration integrity. Monitoring metrics from security operations may influence awareness programs, highlighting areas where training can reduce recurring errors. Internal audit findings often lead to corrective actions that reshape policies or drive new technical safeguards. Each of these examples shows that the ISMS thrives on interaction. When one process feeds into another, the system achieves coherence, enabling continuous refinement across technical, administrative, and procedural domains. Clause 4.4 also positions the ISMS within the organization's broader ecosystem of management systems. Because ISO standards now share a unified framework known as Annex SL, organizations can align their information security processes with those of quality, ISO 9001, environmental, ISO 14001, or continuity management, ISO 2231. This compatibility makes integration straightforward. A single management review meeting can address multiple disciplines, and shared documentation, such as policy templates, risk registers, and audit schedules, reduces redundancy. Evidence collected for one standard can often support others, improving efficiency and consistency. By viewing the ISMS not as a standalone construct, but as part of an interconnected governance network, organizations achieve both operational synergy and simplified compliance across multiple domains. When ISMS processes and their interactions are well defined, the organization becomes more resilient. Predictable workflows create stable outcomes, even under pressure. Interconnected processes reduce the likelihood that a single failure, such as an unaddressed vulnerability or mistraining, will cascade into systemic weakness. This interconnectedness also improves responsiveness. During disruptions, predefined relationships between functions allow the organization to pivot quickly, restoring operations while minimizing damage. The transparency of documented processes builds confidence among customers, partners, and regulators, who can see that the organization's defenses are not ad hoc but strategically coordinated. Ultimately, this structured coherence enhances trust and demonstrates that information security is part of the organization's DNA. Sustaining clarity around process interactions requires deliberate maintenance. Periodic workshops with process owners are valuable for validating whether responsibilities and dependencies remain accurate as the organization evolves. Regular updates to ISMS documentation ensure that changes in technology, personnel, or structure are reflected in real time. Simulation exercises, such as tabletop incident scenarios, can test how processes interact under stress and reveal bottlenecks or weaknesses. Including process interaction reviews in management meetings keeps leadership informed and accountable. These practices prevent stagnation and reinforce a culture of vigilance where everyone understands that the ISMS is an evolving system of interdependent activities, not a static collection of documents. The long-term strategic benefits of Clause 4.4 are profound. When an ISMS is built around well-defined, interconnected processes, it becomes adaptable, scalable, and aligned with the organization's strategic vision. Integration fosters maturity. Each process strengthens the others through shared learning and continuous feedback. As the risk environment changes, the ISMS evolves naturally, guided by the same disciplined logic that supports business success. Over time, this interconnectedness positions the ISMS as more than a compliance mechanism. It becomes a strategic driver of organizational resilience and operational excellence. By embedding clear process interactions, organizations create a management system that not only withstands disruption but grows stronger through it, setting the stage for the leadership responsibilities defined in Clause 5.